The signal came through space like a cry. In the dark, Ambassador Kira Velthana pressed her long fingers against the communication device, watching the blue lights flash as her message traveled to every corner of the galaxy. Her silver eyes were filled with tears she could not shed. There was no time for crying. Now, to all civilized worlds, this is Sanctuary Prime. We need help. The Korak fleet will be here in 3 days. We have no weapons. We have no army. We only have farms and schools and families who want to live. Her voice shook as she spoke. Please, someone help us. The beautiful cities of Sanctuary Prime stretched out below her tower window. The Zelani people moved through their daily lives, tending to their crystal gardens and teaching their children. They did not know that death was coming from the stars. Kira had decided not to tell them yet. What good would panic do now? The responses came quickly from across the galaxy. The proud Alaran Republic sent polite words of sympathy, but said they could not risk war with the Korak Dominion. The Vex Confederation claimed they were too far away to help in time. The Crystalline Alliance said they would hold a meeting to discuss the matter. But meetings took weeks, and Sanctuary Prime had only days. One by one, every great civilization found reasons to say no. They all knew about the Korak Dominion. They knew about the burning worlds and the dead colonies. They knew that anyone who fought the Korak would become their next target. It was easier to look away and hope the monsters would be satisfied with one more world. Kira sat in her chair and felt the weight of failure. Her people would die because she could not save them. She had tried everything. She had begged and pleaded and offered everything Sanctuary Prime had to give, but it was not enough. Far away, near the edge of human space, Captain Jake Morrison was drinking coffee in his command chair when the message reached his ship. The UES Liberty was not much to look at. It was an exploration vessel built for long trips into unknown space. It had basic weapons and shields, but it was not a warship. Jake and his crew spent their time mapping new star systems and looking for interesting planets. Captain, we're getting a distress signal, said Lieutenant Lisa Carter from her station. She was young and smart, fresh out of the academy. It's coming from everywhere. Someone sent this to the whole galaxy. Jake sat down his coffee cup. Let's hear it. Lisa played the message. The alien woman's voice filled the bridge of the Liberty. Jake listened to every word. His crew gathered around to hear the plea from a world they had never seen, from people they had never met. Well, said Jake when the message ended, that's a hell of a thing, sir. The signal came from the sanctuary system. That's about 40 hours away at maximum speed, said Lieutenant Bobby Martinez from the navigation station. But Captain, we're just one ship. The message says the Korvac have a whole fleet coming. Jake stood up and walked to the main screen. It showed the stars ahead of them, cold and distant. Somewhere out there, people were about to die. Good people who had done nothing wrong except live on a world that someone else wanted. Lisa, send a message to Earth Command. Tell them we have a situation that needs immediate attention. Bobby said, course for Sanctuary Prime, maximum speed. Jake turned to face his crew. I know this isn't what we signed up for. We're explorers, not soldiers, but sometimes you have to do what's right, even if it's not what you planned. The crew of the Liberty looked at each other. They were scared. Any sane person would be scared of fighting the core Dominion. But They were human, and humans had a strange habit of doing insane things. When other people needed help, you heard. The captain said, "Lisa, let's go save some aliens." The Liberty turned toward Sanctuary Prime and jumped to faster than light speed. Behind them, Jake's message raced toward Earth at the speed of light, carrying news of a crisis 40 light years away. On Earth, Admiral Frank Sullivan was having a quiet dinner with his wife when the emergency communication came through. He read Jake Morrison's report twice, then called in emergency meeting of the Defense Council. Within an hour, the most important people in human space were gathered in a room deep under Colorado. "Gentlemen, ladies, we have a problem," Sullivan said, bringing up a map of the galaxy. "The Corfac Dominion is about to destroy a peaceful world. Captain Morrison and his crew are already heading there, but one ship can't stop a fleet." General Patricia Hayes, commander of the Space Marines, leaned forward. "How many ships can the Corfac field?" "Intelligence says at least 200, maybe more. They've been building up for this campaign for months." Sullivan touched the screen, zooming in on the sanctuary system. "The Zelani are completely helpless. They don't even have police, much less a military. And how many ships do we have in range?" asked Secretary of Defense Carl Johnson. Sullivan was quiet for a moment. "Maybe 23 ships total. Most of them are cargo haulers and survey vessels like Morrison's. We have 3 real warships available." The room fell silent. Everyone knew the math. 23 human ships against 200 core vessels was not a battle. It was suicide, sir. "With respect, we can't save everyone," said General Hayes. "Humanity is still new to the galaxy. We're just getting established. If we throw our fleet away on a hopeless fight, who will protect Earth?" Admiral Sullivan nodded. He understood the logic. It made perfect sense. Earth first, humanity first. Look out for your own people. It was the smart thing to do, the reasonable thing to do. But then he thought about the message they had received. He thought about a woman with silver eyes begging the galaxy for help. He thought about children who would never grow up in gardens that never bloom again. "You're right, General, it is hopeless," Sullivan said. "The smart play is to stay home and let someone else handle it." That's what every other species in the galaxy decided to do. He stood up and walked to the window that looked out over the mountains. "But you know what? I didn't join the service to make smart plays. I joined to protect people, and right now there are people who need protecting." Sullivan turned back to the council. "I'm authorizing Operation Guardian Angel. Every available ship in the fleet will respond to Sanctuary Prime. We're going to show the galaxy what humans do when innocent people call for help, sir. This could mean the end of our space program," warned Secretary Johnson. "If we lose our fleet, Earth will be defenseless." "Maybe," said Sullivan. "But if we don't go, we'll have to live with knowing we could have saved millions of lives and chose not to. I don't know about you, but I can't live with that." The orders went out within an hour. Across human space, ships received emergency commands to drop everything and head for Sanctuary Prime. Cargo haulers dumped their loads. Survey ships abandoned their missions. Even the orbital construction yards sent their heavy tugs and repair vessels. It was not much of a fleet. Most of the ships had never been in a real fight. Their crews were explorers and merchants and engineers, not warriors. But they were human, and when someone Called for help, humans answered. The race was on, 40 hours to reach Sanctuary Prime before the Korak fleet arrived. 40 hours to save a world that most of the galaxy had already written off as lost. In space there are no heroes or villains, just people making choices. The Korak chose conquest. The galaxy chose safety. The humans chose to answer a cry for help, even though it might destroy them. Sometimes that makes all the difference. The human fleet arrived at Sanctuary Prime like a collection of mismatched toys. Admiral Frank Sullivan stood on the bridge of the UES Defiant and watched his ships take position around the beautiful blue world. He had brought everything he could find: cargo ships with hastily welded armor plates, survey vessels loaded with mining explosives instead of scientific equipment, even a few space tugs that normally moved asteroids around Earth's orbit. Sir, the Zelani are requesting permission to come aboard, said Commander Nancy White, his communications officer. Their ambassador wants to meet with you. Sullivan nodded. Send a shuttle to pick her up, and Nancy, make sure our translator is working. We need to understand each other perfectly. 20 minutes later, Ambassador Kuravillana stepped onto a human starship for the first time in her life. She was tall and thin like all Zelani, with pale blue skin and those large silver eyes. She moved carefully, as if she was afraid the floor might break under her feet. Captain Jake Morrison met her at the airlock. His ship had arrived first, and he had spent the last few hours learning everything he could about Sanctuary Prime. Welcome aboard the Defiant, Ambassador. I'm Captain Morrison. Kira looked around at the human ship. Everything was built heavy and strong. The walls were thick metal, not the elegant crystal and light materials her people preferred. The humans themselves looked solid and dangerous, like they were built for fighting. Captain Morrison, I must thank you for coming when we sent our message. We never expected anyone to answer. Kira's voice was soft and musical. But I must ask, how many ships did you bring? 23 ships total, Morrison said as they walked toward the bridge. I know it doesn't sound like much against the Korak fleet, but we have some ideas. On the bridge, Admiral Sullivan was waiting with his senior officers. The command center was busy with people working at screens and talking into headsets. Red lights blinked on displays, showing ship positions and weapon status. To Kira it looked like chaos, but she could see there was order underneath. Ambassador, welcome to humanity's answer to your call for help, Sullivan said, standing to greet her. I wish we could have brought more ships, but this is what we have. Kira felt tears in her eyes. These strange aliens had traveled across space to help her people. They had brought their whole fleet, even though it was tiny compared to what was coming. Admiral, why did you come? Your people barely know us. We have nothing to offer in return. Sullivan was quiet for a moment. Ambassador, where I come from, when someone needs help and you can give it, you give it. It's that simple. Commander Rick Davis, the fleet's tactical officer, brought up a hologram showing the sanctuary system. The Korak fleet will arrive in 18 hours. Our scouts report 212 ships, mostly heavy cruisers and battleships. They're built for smashing through planetary defenses and bombing cities. Kira looked at the display and felt her heart sink. 200 ships against 23, even. She could see how hopeless it was. Admiral, perhaps you should take your ships and leave. There's no point in all of us dying here, ma'am, with respect. We didn't come here to run away, said Captain Sandra Lewis. She commanded one of the converted cargo ships and had volunteered for the most dangerous part of the plan. We came here to fight. Dr. Amy Chen, the fleet's xenobiologist, stepped forward with her tablet. Ambassador, we need to know more about your system, these asteroid rings around your planet. How dense are they, and what about the magnetic field readings we're getting? The asteroid rings are very thick, Kira said. Most ships avoid them because they're hard to navigate. The magnetic field is stronger than normal because of the iron in our planet's core. Why do you ask? Amy smiled. Because those things that make your system dangerous for normal ships might help us. Humans are used to flying through dangerous spaces. Earth's solar system has asteroid belts and radiation fields that would terrify most aliens. Commander Davis pulled up tactical charts. Here's what we're thinking. The Corfac fight in big formations. They rely on overwhelming firepower and superior numbers. They expect their enemies to meet them in open space for a traditional battle, but we're not going to do that, added Captain Morrison. We're going to use the asteroid field as cover, make them come to us where their big ships can't maneuver easily. Kira studied the battle plan on the hologram. The humans wanted to split their small fleet into even smaller groups. They would hide among the asteroids and attack the Korak ships one at a time. It looked like madness. This plan requires your ships to take enormous risks, she said, flying through the asteroid field at high speed, fighting at close range where the enemy's weapons will be most effective. Your people could all be killed. Yes, ma'am, that's possible, said Admiral Sullivan. But if we try to fight them in open space, we'll definitely all be killed. At least this way we have a chance. Lieutenant Commander Ben Rodriguez had been quiet until now. His ship, the UES Razor, was the fastest in the fleet. Ambassador, can your people evacuate the major cities? If this doesn't work, we want as many of your people as possible to survive. Kira felt a wave of gratitude wash over her. Even planning for their own deaths, these humans were thinking about saving Zelani lives. Yes, we can move people to the underground shelters, but Captain, if you're all killed defending us, how will that help anyone? Captain Lewis laughed, and the sound surprised Kira. How could anyone laugh at a time like this, ma'am? Where we come from, sometimes you have to stand up to bullies, even if you might lose. If we don't fight them here, they'll just keep destroying other worlds. Dr. Chen was working with Zelani scientists through the communication link. I'm getting some interesting data about Korak biology. They evolved on a low-gravity world with a very clean environment. Their immune systems might not be prepared for the kind of bacteria we carry. What does that mean? Asked Kira. It means if we can get close enough for boarding actions, we might have an advantage they don't expect. Amy explained. Humans carry all sorts of microorganisms that are harmless to us, but could be dangerous to them. Admiral Sullivan was making final preparations. All ships begin moving to your assigned positions in the asteroid field. Remember, we're not trying to destroy their whole fleet. We just need to hurt them badly enough that they decide Sanctuary Prime isn't worth the cost. As the human ships moved into position, Kira watched from the bridge of the Defiant. The small fleet looked tiny against the vast asteroid rings, but There was something about the way they moved that impressed her. These humans flew through the dangerous space like they were born to it. Admiral, may I ask you something? Kira said. Your people are new to the galaxy. You could have stayed hidden and safe. Why risk everything for strangers? Sullivan looked out at the stars where the Korak fleet would soon appear. Ambassador, my grandmother used to tell me stories about Earth's history, about times when good people stood by and did nothing while bad things happened. She always said that evil wins when good people choose to do nothing. But your fleet is so small, Kira said. What can 23 ships do against 200? Captain Morrison overheard and smiled. Ma'am, you'd be surprised what humans can do when we put our minds to it. We've been fighting impossible odds since we climbed down from the trees. It's what we do best. The countdown clock on the main screen showed 16 hours until the Korach fleet arrived across the human fleet. Crews were making final preparations, loading weapons, checking systems, writing letters home that might never be sent. On Sanctuary Prime below the Zelani, people were finally learning about the danger coming for them, but they were also learning about the strange aliens who had come to stand between them in destruction. For the first time since the crisis began, some of them dared to hope. In the asteroid field, human ships took their positions and waited. They were outnumbered 10-1, outgunned and facing the most feared military force in the galaxy, but they were human and humans had never learned when to quit. The Korach fleet dropped out of faster than light travel like a swarm of metal wasps. 212 ships spread across space in perfect formation, their dark hulls bristling with weapons. War Marshal Thex Korv stood on the bridge of his flagship and smiled. Another conquest, another world to add to the Dominion. Marshal, we're detecting ships in the system, reported his tactical officer. 23 vessels, mostly small craft. They appear to be hiding in the asteroid field. Corvin laughed. It was a harsh sound like metal scraping against stone. 23 ships, that's all. What species are they? Unknown, sir. The ship designs don't match anything in our database. They seem to be using very primitive technology, probably some local defense force, Korv said, waving a clawed hand. Send a message telling them to surrender or be destroyed. We have a schedule to keep. On the bridge of the UES Defiant, Admiral Sullivan watched the massive alien fleet on his screens. Each Korthak ship was bigger than anything in his fleet. Their weapons could probably destroy a human vessel with a single shot, but Sullivan had not come here to run away. Adam, they're sending us a surrender demand, reported Commander White. They want us to leave the system immediately or be destroyed. Send them our reply, Sullivan said calmly. Tell them we decline their generous offer. Across the human fleet, crews made final preparations. Captain Morrison on the Liberty checked his weapon systems. Captain Lewis on the Frontier armed the mining charges her crew had loaded into the cargo bay. Lieutenant Commander Rodriguez on the Razor tested his ship's engines one more time. The first shot came from the Korfak fleet. A massive energy beam lanced out toward the asteroid field, striking a space rock the size of a building and turning it into glowing vapor. It was meant to be a warning, a show of power to frighten the primitive defenders. Instead, it told the humans exactly what they were dealing with. All ships execute Alpha pattern, Admiral Sullivan ordered. Remember, we're not here to win a fair fight, we're here to make them pay for every inch. The human ships scattered like leaves in a storm, but there was purpose behind their movement. Captain Morrison took the Liberty deep into the asteroid field using the spinning rocks as cover. His ship was built for exploration with extra strong shields to survive impacts with space debris. Now, that protection would keep him alive against enemy fire. War Marshal Corvine watched the human ships disappear among the asteroids with annoyance. Send in the vanguard, clear those rocks and destroy those ships. I want this finished quickly. 50 Korthak cruisers moved toward the asteroid field. In neat formation, they fired their weapons in coordinated volleys, blasting holes through the floating rocks. It was textbook space warfare, the kind of tactics that had conquered 100 worlds, but the humans were not following the textbook. Captain Morrison waited until the lead Korak ship was deep in the asteroid field before attacking. The Liberty came screaming out from behind a massive rock, all weapons firing. The alien ship's shields flared under the assault, but they held. Morrison's ship was too small to do serious damage to a heavy cruiser. But that was not the point. Ben now would be good, Morrison said into his communicator. The UES Razor appeared from another direction, moving at a speed that should have been impossible. Among the asteroids, Lieutenant Commander Rodriguez flew his ship like he was threading a needle, weaving between rocks that would have crushed a less skilled pilot. The Razor's weapons were small, but they were aimed at the Korfak ship's sensor array. The alien cruiser suddenly found itself blind, its targeting computers confused by the damage. The captain tried to back away from the asteroid field, but that was exactly what the humans wanted. Captain Lewis brought the Frontier around behind the retreating cruiser. Her cargo ship was slow and clumsy, but she did not need speed for what came next. She opened her cargo bay and released a dozen mining charges, each one programmed to seek out metal targets. The explosives swarmed over the Korfak cruiser like angry bees. They were not military weapons, just tools for breaking apart asteroids, but they were designed to crack through solid rock. And starship armor was not that different from rock. The cruiser's hull split open in 3 places. Atmosphere rushed out into space in glowing streams. The ship was not destroyed, but it was crippled, drifting helplessly while its crew tried to seal the breaches. First blood to us, Captain Morrison reported, but they're getting smart. Here come more of them. War Marshal Corvin stared at his tactical display in disbelief. One of his cruisers had been disabled by 3 primitive ships using mining equipment. It should not have been possible. Who are these aliens? He demanded. His intelligence officer checked the database again. Sir, I'm getting partial matches. The ship designs are similar to vessels used by a species called humans, but the records say they're a minor power with only a few dozen ships. Humans? Corvin repeated the word like it tasted bad. I've never heard of them. How did they disable one of my cruisers? They're not fighting like civilized species, sir. They're using the asteroids as weapons, making individual attacks instead of formation fighting. Their tactics are completely unpredictable. Corvin's anger was growing. He had conquered species with technology far superior to these humans. He had destroyed fleets 10 times larger than this pathetic collection of ships. He would not be embarrassed by primitive aliens with improvised weapons. Send in 2 full squadrons, blast every asteroid in that field if you have to. I want those ships destroyed. 100 Korak warships moved toward the asteroid field, their weapons charging for a devastating bombardment, but the humans had been busy while the aliens planned their attack. Dr. Amy Chen had been working with the Zelani scientists to understand the unique properties of Sanctuary Prime's asteroid field. The rocks were rich in metal ore and had strange magnetic properties. When she explained her discovery to the human engineers, they immediately saw the possibilities. All ships prepare for Magneto Protocol. Admiral Sullivan ordered. The human ships had spent the last hour attaching metal cables to the larger asteroids. Now they began spinning them, using their engines to turn the space rocks into massive slingshots. It was insane engineering that would have horrified any safety inspector, but it worked. Captain Rodriguez brought the razor in close to a spinning asteroid and released it at exactly the right moment. The rock, as big as a city block, went flying through space like a cannonball. It struck the lead Korak ship with the force of a nuclear explosion. The alien cruiser simply ceased to exist, torn apart by the impact. Pieces of both ship and asteroid scattered through the fleet formation, causing other vessels to break away and dodge the debris. Impossible, War Marshal Corvin whispered. They're using asteroids as projectiles. More spinning rocks followed the first. The humans had turned the entire asteroid field into a weapon, flinging massive chunks of stone and metal at the Korvac fleet. The aliens had superior technology in overwhelming numbers, but they had never faced an enemy that weaponized the environment itself. 3 more core ships were destroyed by asteroid impacts. 2 others collided with each other while trying to avoid the flying rocks. The neat formation collapsed into chaos as captains tried to protect their ships from an attack unlike anything in their experience. But the humans were taking losses too. The UES Explorer was caught by concentrated fire from 5 Korvac ships and exploded in a ball of flame. The cargo hauler UES Titan was rammed by a damaged alien cruiser and broke apart, its crew lost. In the vacuum of space, Captain Morrison watched his friends die and felt cold fury building in his chest. These aliens had come here to destroy an entire world full of innocent people, they thought. Their superior numbers and technology made them untouchable. Time to teach them about human determination. All remaining ships prepare for close assault. Morrison ordered. We're going to show these bullies what happens when you pick on the wrong species. The human ships charged out of the asteroid field like ancient cavalry, heading straight for the heart of the Korvac fleet. They were outnumbered, outgunned, and probably about to die. But they were human, and they had decided that some things were worth dying for. The human ships crashed into the Korvac fleet like stones thrown at a glass house. Captain Morrison led the charge. In the Liberty, his exploration vessel, racing toward ships 10 times its size. Behind him came the survivors, 13 battered human ships against more than 150 alien warships. War Marshal Corvin watched the suicidal charge with amazement. No civilized species would attempt such a reckless attack. These humans were either insane or desperate beyond reason, perhaps both. All ships concentrate fire on the lead vessels. Corvin ordered, destroy them before they reach our formation. The space around the Liberty exploded with enemy fire. Energy beams and plasma bolts filled the darkness like a deadly light. Morrison's ship shook under the bombardment, sparks flying from damaged systems. His shields were failing, his weapons were overheating, but he kept flying straight toward the enemy. Captain, we can't take much more of this, shouted Lieutenant Carter from her station. Shields are down to 20%. Hold course, Morrison replied, his hand steady on the controls. We're almost there. The Liberty struck the side of a Korak battleship like a bullet hitting armor. Morrison had angled his ship to hit with the reinforced nose section, the part built to survive impacts with asteroids and space debris. The collision tore through the alien ship's hull, ripping a hole 50 m wide. Both ships spun away from each other. Badly damaged, the Liberty's front section was crushed, fires burning in 3 compartments, but they were alive. And more importantly, they were inside the enemy formation. Lisa, send the code word to all ships. Morrison gasped, blood running down his face from a head wound. Tell them it's time for the party. Across the human fleet, crews heard the signal they had been waiting for. The real battle was about to begin. Captain Sandra Lewis brought the Frontier alongside a damaged Corvac cruiser. Her cargo ship was barely holding together, but her crew was still fighting. Boarding party, go, 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 she shouted. Airlocks opened and humans in spacesuits jumped across the gap between ships. Sergeant Major Kate Williams led the assault. Her Marines, armed with simple projectile weapons and determination. The Korak had energy shields that could stop plasma bolts, but they had never faced old-fashioned bullets. The alien crew tried to resist the boarding party, but they were not prepared for close combat with humans. The Korak were tall and thin, evolved on a world with light gravity. Their bones were hollow like bird bones, designed for a gentle environment. Humans were built like tanks in comparison, dense muscle and heavy bones from a world that tried to kill everything on it. Kate Williams kicked down a blast door that would have stopped most aliens and charged into the Corvac command center. The enemy captain tried to draw his sidearm, but Williams was faster. Her rifle butt caught him in the chest and sent him flying across the room. Bridge secured, she reported. These aliens are not built for fighting. Dr. Amy Chen had been right about Korak biology. The aliens had evolved in a sterile environment and had weak immune system. Just being on the same ship as humans was making some of them sick. The bacteria that humans carried everywhere, harmless to people from Earth, was like poison to the Corvac. Lieutenant Commander Rodriguez was having the time of his life. The Razor danced through the enemy fleet like a fish swimming through a school of sharks. His ship was too fast and too small for the big core vessels to hit, but their weapons could still hurt the aliens. Target their engines, Rodriguez told his gunner. We can't destroy these big ships, but we can sure slow them down. The Razor fired at the drive section of a core destroyer, its small lasers cutting through engine housing and power conduits. The alien ship shuddered and began to list its thrust, failing. Another enemy vessel was crippled, adding to the growing chaos in the Corvac formation. But the humans were paying a terrible price for their success. The cargo ship UES Builder exploded when its improvised armor finally failed. The survey vessel UES Compass was cut in half by a Corey beam, its crew lost in seconds. Captain Morrison watched ship after ship disappear from his tactical display and felt each loss like a knife. In his heart, "Admiral, we've lost 8 ships," reported Commander White from the Defiant. "We're down to 15 vessels still fighting." Admiral Sullivan nodded grimly. The plan was working, but the cost was higher than he had hoped. The human fleet was being destroyed piece by piece, but they were taking many Korak ships with them. The question was whether they could do enough damage before they were all killed. War Marshal Corvin was beginning to understand that he had made a terrible mistake. These humans were not like other species. They did not surrender. When faced with impossible odds, they did not retreat. When their ships were damaged, they fought like cornered animals, vicious and unpredictable. "Sir, we've lost 37 ships," his tactical officer reported. "The humans are using ramming attacks, boarding parties and suicide runs. Our formations are breaking apart." Corvin stared at the battle display. His fleet still outnumbered the humans 10 to 1, but his ships were scattered and confused. Captains were making their own decisions instead of following orders, trying to protect their vessels from these insane aliens. "Order all ships to pull back and regroup," Korf commanded. "We'll destroy them with long-range bombardment." But the humans would not let him retreat. Captain Morrison, his ship dying around him, made one last desperate attack. The Liberty, trailing fire and debris, rammed straight into the Korak flagship's communication array. The collision destroyed both the human ship and the aliens' ability to coordinate their fleet. Morrison's last message reached Admiral Sullivan just before the Liberty exploded. "Remember why we came here." The words hit Sullivan like a physical K.H. Jake. Morrison had been a good man, a friend who believed in doing the right thing, even when it cost everything. Now he was dead along with his entire crew because they had answered a stranger's call for help. But Morrison's sacrifice gave the other human ships the opening they needed. With the Korfak communications down, the alien fleet was blind and confused. Individual ships fought alone, unable to coordinate with their neighbors. Captain Lewis and her Marines had captured 3 Korak vessels and were using them against their former owners. The sight of their own ships firing on them broke the morale of many alien crews. Some Korthak ships began to retreat without orders, their captains deciding that conquest was not worth dying for. Dr. Chen made a crucial discovery aboard one of the captured ships. The Korach had a fatal weakness beyond their fragile biology. Their entire culture was based on overwhelming force and easy victories. They had never faced an enemy that refused to give up, that kept fighting even when defeat was certain. "Admiral, I'm reading panic communications from the Korak fleet," she reported. "They're calling us death-seeking madmen. Some of their ships are requesting permission to withdraw." Sullivan allowed himself a grim smile. The humans had lost more than half their fleet, but they had broken something important in the Korak formation. They had shown these aliens that their victims could fight back. All remaining ships prepare for final assault. Sullivan ordered, "Let's finish this." The last 8 human vessels charged toward the Korfak flagship, where War Marshal Korf was trying desperately to restore order to his fleet. The aliens still had superior numbers and firepower, but they know longer had the will to use them. Effectively, in the space around Sanctuary Prime, the battle reached its climax. Human ships burned and died, but they took their enemies with them. The peaceful world below watched as strangers from across the galaxy fought to save them from destruction. It was the moment that would change everything. When the galaxy learned that the age of easy conquest was over, the Deathworlders had come to fight. War. Marshal Thex Corvin stared at his tactical display and felt something he had never experienced before in 3 decades of conquest. Fear, not fear of dying, but fear of an enemy that simply would not accept defeat. The humans had lost most of their fleet, but the survivors kept attacking as if they had already won the battle. Sir, 49 of our ships are destroyed or disabled, his tactical officer reported, his voice shaking. Remaining vessels are requesting permission to retreat. The crews are saying the humans are demons who cannot be killed. Corvin watched as another human ship rammed one of his cruisers. The explosion lit up space like a small sun, destroying both vessels. These aliens fought like the universe owed them nothing, and they expected nothing but pain. It was terrifying. Marshal, incoming transmission from the human fleet. His communications officer said their admiral wants to talk. Put him through, Corvin ordered. He needed to understand what kind of creatures he was fighting. Admiral Frank Sullivan appeared on the screen, his uniform torn and blood on his face. Behind him, the bridge of the Defiant was damaged and smoking, but still operational. Marshal Corvin, I presume. I'm Admiral Sullivan of the human fleet. You're insane, Corv said without thinking. Your fleet is destroyed. You have maybe 8 ships left. Surrender now and I might let your crews live. Sullivan smiled, and it was not a pleasant expression. Marshal, you seem to misunderstand the situation. We didn't come here to win a space battle. We came here to save the people on that planet. As long as one human ship is still fighting, you haven't won anything. You cannot stop my fleet with 8 ships. Corv protested. Maybe not, Sullivan agreed, but we can make you pay such a high price that your own people will question whether conquest is worth it. How many ships are you willing to lose for one agricultural world? Corvin looked at his tactical display again. He had started this battle with 212 ships. Now he had less than 160 still able to fight. The humans were costing him almost 3 ships for everyone they lost. At this rate, even if he won, his fleet would be too damaged to hold the territory they had conquered. Besides, Sullivan continued, you're forgetting something important. This battle is being broadcast across the galaxy. Every species that you've threatened, every world that lives in fear of the Korak Dominion is watching us fight. They're learning that you can be beaten. That hit Corvin like a physical blow. The Dominion's power depended on fear, on the belief that resistance was hopeless. If word spread that a handful of primitive ships had hurt his fleet this badly, other worlds might start fighting back. On Sanctuary Prime below, Ambassador Karathana watched the battle from the emergency command center. The human fleet was dying to save her people, and there was nothing she could do to help them. Tears ran down her blue cheeks as she watched each ship sacrifice itself for strangers. Ambassador, the other species are responding to the battle footage. Her aide reported, The Altarian Republic is mobilizing their fleet. The Vex Confederation is offering military support. Even the Crystalline Alliance is talking about joint defense agreements. Kira felt a spark of hope. The humans had done more than just defend Sanctuary Prime. They had shown the galaxy that the Corvac could be. Fought and beaten, their sacrifice was inspiring others to stand up to the bullies who had terrorized space for so long. In space, the final act of the battle was beginning. Captain Sandra Lewis brought her crippled cargo ship, the Frontier, toward the Corvac flagship. Her vessel was held together by emergency welds and desperate prayers, but her crew was still fighting. Sandra, you don't have to do this, Admiral Sullivan said over the radio. Your ship is too damaged for another attack run. With respect, Admiral, these aliens came here to kill innocent people, Lewis replied. My crew and I signed up to stop them. We're going to finish the job. The Frontier accelerated toward the massive Corvac battleship, every engine straining to build up speed. Lewis knew she would not survive the collision, but she also knew it would send a message that would echo across the galaxy. Humans did not give up even when death was certain. War. Marshal Corvin watched the approaching cargo ship with growing horror. The human captain was going to ram his flagship, sacrificing her life and her crew just to hurt his fleet one more time. It was beyond insane. It was inhuman. All weapons destroy that ship, he ordered. Energy beams and plasma bolts converged on the Frontier, tearing through its improvised armor and setting fires throughout the hull. But the ship kept coming, its captain somehow keeping it on course even as it fell apart around her. The impact threw Corvin to the deck of his bridge. The Frontier struck his flagship near the engine section, its cargo of mining explosives detonating in a chain reaction that crippled the massive warship. Emergency lights flickered on as main power failed, and damage reports flooded in from every section. Sir, we've lost main engines and half our weapons, his engineering officer reported. We need immediate repairs or we'll have to abandon ship. Corvin pulled himself to his feet and looked around his ruined bridge. More than half his fleet was gone, destroyed by an enemy that should have been swept aside in minutes. His flagship was crippled, his crews were demoralized, and the entire galaxy was watching his humiliation. But the worst part was the knowledge that even if he won this battle, he had already lost the war. Other species would see what the humans had accomplished with 23 ships and start building their own fleets. The age of easy conquest was over. All ships withdraw from the system, Corvin ordered. Quietly set course for home. His tactical officer stared at him in shock. Sir, we still outnumber the humans. We can still complete the mission. At what cost? Corvin asked. Look at your screens. We've lost a quarter of our fleet fighting cargo ships and survey vessels. If we stay, we'll lose even more ships, and for what? One agricultural world that the whole galaxy is now watching. The surviving Korak ships began to retreat, their formation broken and their morale shattered. For the first time in their history, they were running from a weaker enemy. The humans had won not through superior firepower but through sheer determination and a willingness to pay any price for victory. Admiral Sullivan watched the alien fleet withdraw and felt a mixture of triumph and sorrow. They had saved Sanctuary Prime, but the cost had been terrible. Of the 23 ships that had answered the Zelani call for help. Only 4 were still operational. Hundreds of good people had died in the battle, including friends like Jake Morrison and Sandra Lewis. Admiral, we're receiving messages from across the galaxy, Commander White reported. Species we've never heard of are offering alliance treaties. They want to know how they can get human protection. 6 months later, Admiral Sullivan stood before the Galactic Council on the neutral world of Nexus Station. The Great Hall was filled with representatives from hundreds of species, all of them listening to the human who had changed the balance of power in the galaxy. We didn't come to your galaxy to conquer or to rule, Sullivan said, his voice carrying clearly through the chamber. We came because we believe that when someone calls for help, you answer that call. That's what civilized beings do. The Altarian ambassador stood up. Admiral Sullivan, your actions at Sanctuary Prime have inspired a new alliance. 17 species have agreed to form a mutual defense pact. We would be honored to have humanity as our leaders. Sullivan shook his head. We don't want to lead anyone. We just want to help. When the next call for aid comes, and it will come, we'll be there. And now we won't be alone. On Sanctuary Prime, a monument had been built to honor the human crews who died defending the world. Ambassador Karathana visited it every day, bringing flowers from the crystal gardens that the Korech would have destroyed. The names of the dead were carved in stone with Jake Morrison's name at the top. Below the names was a simple inscription in both Zelani and English. They heard our cry for help and they answered. Across the galaxy, the age of unchallenged tyranny was ending. Oppressed worlds were building fleets and forming alliances. The Korak Dominion was fracturing as subject species rebelled, inspired by the example of 23 human ships that had chosen to fight impossible odds. Deathworlders had found their place among the stars, not as conquerors or merchants, but as the guardians who stood between the innocent and those who would harm them, and the galaxy would never be the same.